The exploration into the old world comes with a lot of reset talk. There seems to be a lot of debate as to how many times these resets have occurred. Are we on the brink of another one at the moment? All of this is speculation, and I don't really rule anything out. But as I look into some of these old cities, a pattern begins to emerge. This is Matera in Italy, and we get a typical historical narrative that you would expect to see from somewhere in Italy, with Roman roots and medieval conquerings and reconquerings and all the rest of it. But if you're familiar with the work of Anatoly Fomenko and the inserted 1,000 years of history, the entire medieval era gets thrown into question. And when you couple that with the theory that there was once a magnificent civilization living here, and we are basically living in the ruins of much of what was left over, it starts to be seen in a different light. And the given historical narratives begin to appear mechanical. There's a lot of repeats, too much detail where there shouldn't be much detail, and not enough detail where there should. You get a lot of evidence like this, and if you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that I delve into the post-Cataclysm world that we live in the modern day, and what we're looking at is likely the remains of a massive cataclysm beyond our comprehension. I'm not going to tell you how that happened, what happened, when it happened, because I don't know. But what I can tell you from using my eyes is what we're being told about history is not accurate. It's not an accurate portrayal of the past of these places. You have a good mix too. As we roll through Matera here, you can see some of these structures are fairly well intact. Maybe some of them have been dressed up and repainted and cleaned up. But there are a lot that are giving away the likelihood that something massive happened here that changed the state of matter, and these things are being given false history and a false purpose to fit a timeline that we have been trained to believe is the truth. And there are plenty of examples. This is just one in Matera. I'll show you a few more as we move forward. So many of these get attributed to the monks, the grottos of the monks, giving it some sort of religious purpose. It's interesting. You look a little bit closer, you can see the lines are blurred, and I've shown many examples like this here on my channel. So what are we dealing with really as we look at world history? All of these different languages, different cultures. What are the true roots of the people here? Are we all really just clones? And have we been given languages to separate us? Kind of having a feel of that biblical Tower of Babel story that we get. Do we all have memory of a past that is all but forgotten? And is that memory living through what we now consider to be cultures, regional cultures? Because we get to a point where to justify the existence of this type of evidence and fit that into the given historical narrative, you really have to do some mental gymnastics to make that fit. And you have to look the other way on a lot of what we see. Let me give you another example. This is Gamsut in the Republic of Dagestan, modern day Russia. You can see the dot here as I zoom in. Gamsut, a modern day ghost town, and we get very similar narrative. The exact age of the village is unknown, much like Matera in Italy, but it is considered to be one of the oldest settlements in Dagestan, being over 2,000 to 5,000 years old, we're told, on the peak of this hill. Interesting way to build, wouldn't you say? And you can see evidence of it having been lived in somewhat recent times. But there is also a lot of evidence to suggest what we're looking at is an area that has been altered dramatically in some sort of cataclysm. Because it's illogical to assume that these things were built in these locations. As you can see here, a lot of evidence showing the altered states of matter, and you get to a point where it gets a bit grainy, but you've got what we would consider to be man-made sitting directly on top of this oozing rock, for lack of a better term. You can see it here as well. I apologize for the graininess of this one, but it's completely illogical. My suggestion, what I suspect, is that the building materials that we're seeing in our modern day are nowhere near in their original state. A lot of people have trouble believing that because, okay, how can they still have a hard 90-degree angle? I don't know. I don't know what happened. You can see here as well, a lot of these walls were coated, which we often see. And this is a good example of something that was not originally built to look this way, but has been dramatically altered and was dwelled in for a time period after a massive cataclysm took place and altered the original version of this city, structure, location. Was the entire realm terrified? I don't know. These are all just questions that sort of swirl through my mind at times. And all you really have to do is look through the historical narratives on these places to discover how little is known, how much is guesswork, and how much trust and faith do we actually put into this guesswork. Is it because these people are experts in their fields that we defer to their knowledge base for our understanding of the past? I think that's a mistake and is easily abused. That trust is easily abused. And there are plenty of examples very similar to this. I'll show you a few more. Not making any logical sense whatsoever to build in such a location. And this is the Siwa Oasis in Egypt, said to be below sea level. Now, I don't really know how you get sea level if we're on a spinning ball, but that's another discussion for another time. And historians tell us this place has been inhabited since at least the 10th millennium BCE. But of course, it was the ancient Egyptians that first started using it for necropolis purposes. Now, this screams to me post-cataclysm. This is what remains after something absolutely devastating happens to a region, as far as I'm concerned. I do not believe this hill here is natural in any way, but is the result of a massive transformation in matter itself. You can see again the buildings sort of just working their way in. You have an opening here, a lot of horizontal lines. And again, I think the chronology of history is a fabrication. I think a lot of what we consider to be ancient Egypt and that narrative has been crafted for our consumption to help bolster the timeline that we are expected to believe, truth about our past, as it were. Did they tell us it was a cemetery? Well, it sure is. It's not a complete lie. They'll also tell us that the building materials themselves were clay bricks. What I'm seeing here is, again, building materials that are not in the original state that they were. Now, we don't get those kinds of explanations because science doesn't allow for that possibility for these building materials to have changed in such a fashion. So rather than admitting that, although we have seen plenty of evidence suggesting that's the case, science comes up with a fanciful explanation that forces us to believe what we're being told rather than what we see with our eyes. It's a lot like the magician, the magic trick in the magician. Here's a good example of what I mean. These have been roasted, melted, destroyed, and it becomes indistinguishable what we consider to be natural landscape and man-made structure. Completely illogical to build anything on this ridge of sandstone, as they would tell us. But that's what we're expected to believe. And sometimes the rebuttal is, well, that would have to be a huge deception, a massive deception. And my answer to that is yes. This is not some small group of evil people trying to deceive the nations. This is very deeply spiritual. I think there's definitely a good versus evil aspect to all of this. The little season theory I do find interesting. How Satan was allowed to rule for, was it 250 years or so? I don't know how people get an exact date on that, but I think everything like that has a grain of truth in it. I don't buy in wholeheartedly to anything, but I don't rule it out either. See, here we have part of the narrative. This is an early photograph telling us that this is a dried mud town in Siwa, situated on a high rock in the Libyan desert. Now, maybe that changed hands and now it's Egypt. Again, the drawing of the map is all quite recent as well. The modern day map is quite a recent creation, a result of many of the wars that have taken place in the last century and a half. This is just the evidence. Is this a natural rock? Are we seeing the after effect of structure to the point where it becomes very difficult to tell? Use your eyes and don't believe what you're told. Let's pop back over to Dagestan. Let me show you one more place. This time we go to Kakib, and we'll get a very similar story. This is an abandoned mountain town built from thick stone blocks, we're told. Well, yeah. You can see some of the blocks here on the lower portions of many of these towers. So you've got a very mixed medium of sizes here. And again, I reiterate what I believe, that we're looking at structure that's not in its original state, but is really just a pale shadow of what it once was. And you can see the lower areas here. Completely illogical to have built in such a manner, suggesting that the historical narrative we're given, which is thin at best, is an absolute fabrication meant to fit a history that they want us to believe. Here's a really good visual of the region itself. You can see it in waves. It really makes you wonder what this place looked like. Are we actually living in a realm that is completely unrecognizable to what it once was? Are there pockets of survival? Are there areas that were not affected as dramatically as these areas? Is that what we're looking at with the old world structures? Are the old world structures that are intact from a subsequent civilization? These are all questions I find interesting to ponder on, but completely illogical to believe the historical narrative. And I think that's the point of my video here, is recognize the explanations that we're being given about the past, about who we are, where we are. All of these things are deceptions. And I'm not saying everyone believing that or creating these theories about the past are malevolent in any way. I think we're all part of a system that has manipulated our perception. So it's not necessarily an attack on these people who are deceiving us. I mean, we deceive each other by not knowing the truth. This is more a recognition and an emancipation from that deception, a suggestion that looking at our past in a new light without any assumptions, and recognizing what we're seeing as being unexplained through modern expertise and explanations, I think is the point of what I'm trying to make in this video. And I could go on. I could show you a lot more from all over the world, and I have in previous videos, but I think, and I hope that you get my message in this video, and I encourage you to do your own explorations and share your conclusions. Thanks for being here. This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.